Kardec page. We are live streaming here on February 17th, 2019 on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, all time zones in between and around the world. Last week, you may have missed my program. Last week here up streaming to you from the Pacific Northwest, we had no internet and no power. Of course, one follows the other. So I apologize for that, but we were completely shut down. It was kind of give you a time to think and a time to, reassess where you are. And in fact, it's very good for what we're talking about now, which is chapter 21 of my book, How to Live a Spirit of Renovation. But first, let's talk about Kardec Radio. You see, I have my new Kardec Radio icon. We are streaming using Be Live from, hello, good morning, Alicia Ramos. We are streaming live using the Kardec Radio site. We are streaming on the Kardec Radio Facebook site, and we are live on Kardec Radio, the app that's on your Android or your Apple phone. So, of course, this is a free app. You can load onto your phone. You can hear Kardec Radio 24 hours per day. Just type in Kardec Radio is in there. It's like all one word. You want a space. They'll find it. Kardec, Kardec Radio, and you can put that on your phone, and you can listen to wonderful Spiritist programs 24 hours a day. You can go to the Kardec Facebook page. You can go to my page, Spiritism in the Spirit World Around Us Facebook page. I also have a blog. You can see it. It's nwspiritism.com. I have many articles. I have links to my books on the right-hand navigation side. In fact, one of the books I'm talking about today is my book that's based upon, it's a poem by Henri Louis, and I use that. It has 24 verses, and it was in originally the book Spiritual Wisdom, The Mists of Hope by Herculano Perez and then Chico Xavier. And it's very short. And then the 21st verse was just 4 words, a spirit of renovation. And what I have tried to do in this book is to say, okay, what does each one of these very short verses mean? And what do they mean? And then how do we get there? So Henri Louis presented this to us as a step-by-step process whereby we elevate ourselves and get ourselves ready to ascend in the spiritual world. Now, renovation, renewal, and transformation are all words to describe our life on earth. Many have said that life is one of the constant re-invention of oneself. We travel through life learning, changing, resetting our priorities, and improving our character. In fact, Spiritism presents an even greater arc to the story, that of the process of renovation occurring over multiple lifetimes, and Spiritism supplies the purpose of our journey, the goal of perfection. And talking about that, I've had some really good comments, and one from Lawrence, one of the person that kind of watches this, reads the blog and has read some of my books, and he asked, why hasn't the spirit world really infused the overarching love that's in the universe? And his point is this process of renovation, this process of reincarnation is so inefficient. It takes so long. And I answered, I said, well, I think it takes long. And of course, I don't know, right? Do I know the positive, the answer? And is he right? I do know that I read where in the books by the Reverend G. Val Owen, one of the spirits, I can't remember, I was looking for this, I couldn't find it, but I was looking for it, and I remember what he said. One of the spirits said that men, is that first he questioned, why is the reward for for living in luxury and money, why is the reward for pleasure so much greater than the reward for doing good? And then he thought about that, and he really thought it's because it's the journey. It makes the journey tougher. It's like training. If you do a light training, if you're going to run a marathon and you just run, practice by going 2 miles, 10 miles, right? You'll run those 10 miles probably by the time you're really good. But then when you're at the day of the marathon, are you ready to step up and tackle that marathon? And I think that's really what it is here. It's hard because it is meant to be a long, long process. And of course, from our point of view, long, for a kid, long as a day. For an adult, long as could be a month or a year. It's, all depends on your frame of mind. But here, us in our physical bodies, you know, 10 years, everyone agrees 10 years is a long time. But of course, our journey through improvement takes it could take thousands, millions of years, and who knows how many reincarnations from a very primitive spirit to where we are now. We're on a planet of atonement. We're still pretty low level. We still have a lot to learn. So I don't know if I could answer this question because it's an open question. It's a good question. How could we make this process more efficient? All I can think of is God has had, you know, God knows, right? He is perfection. She is perfection. It is perfection. The supreme intelligence, whatever you want to name it, knows the best. And every time, and what other spirits have said in the books, I've written a series of 3 books all about the Reverend G. Vow, and all the great messages he got from high spirits, and those are also in my right hand navigation page of www.nwspiritism.com. And the first book is Heaven and Below, and it just goes through and it categorizes. And I went through all of it. I read his books multiple times. And I categorize all of the transmissions of spirits to the Reverend G. Vow one and talk about in different categories and what it means to us. And I juxtapose that against information from Allan Kardec, Chico Xavier, Ivan Pira, etc. And it really shows that the commissions, the messages he got, the communications he got were all in line with Spiritism. So let's get back to what we're talking about. Why are the spirit of renovation, right? This is what Henri Louis, and it's so topical because I've had people questioning this. And I had another person question, like, sometimes I get depressed. I just, I don't get where I want to be. I'm not perfect. And I have to tell people who ask me these things is you're not going to be, maybe the very rare person, you're not going to be perfect in one life. Even, no matter where you started from, and you're really trying, we all have these primitive emotions we're just going to have to get out of us, right? And we just have to be patient with ourselves. It doesn't mean, we don't have to be like in the modern culture where we all give ourselves a participation trophy. We're doing well. We know we need to analyze and be analytical and be true to what we are good points and bad points, and really try to improve the areas we think we should improve, the ones that our conscience tells us to improve. But no one should say, I want to be perfect. I'm never going to lose my temper. I'm always going to be nice. I'm not going to have bad thoughts. That's, I don't see how you can do that. Someone like Chico, probably, who's probably the highest spirit on earth that's been on earth for thousands of years, Chico Xavier, back in, in the 20th century, because he died, I think, 2002. So in Brazil. So that's why, but we can improve ourselves, and that's why we're here. And so I like to explore what is meant by spirit of renovation. So let's talk about that for a second. Allan Kardec, in the Spirits book, his codification of the third revelation, and you can find his spirit book. This is where I started. This is where I think everyone should start, is you should really read the Spirits book, and you can find this. There's a link to his picture on my site, nwspiritism.com. You click on that, you go to the EDI-CEI bookstore. Also, you can just type in the Spirits book or Allan Kardec, type in PDF. You'll find all his books in PDF. So it's very convenient. Oh, hello, Vanessa. Yes, see, I have the Kardec radio icon on now. We have power this weekend, which is great. So in his book, Allan Kardec's codification of the third revelation for many high spirits, led by the Spirit of Truth, tells us why we are incarnated. Why are we reborn in a different body for life? And this all points to what the Spirit Henri Louis wrote in his poem, A Spirit of Renovation. So renovation means improving ourselves, right? Transforming ourselves. Question 132, what is the aim of the incarnation of spirits? This is the answer. And I like to point out that Allan Kardec, did not just he was not a medium himself. He used mediums throughout Europe, asked them the same question, like question 132, and he only used the answer if he got similar answers from multiple mediums in different locations. This is why this Spirit's book is so interesting, because it wasn't just one person talking to one spirit. And a lot of those things, I'm sure, are wonderful books and a lot of good information. And I've read some of them, and a lot of them, are very closely parallel to Spiritism. But I mean, this was one that was really organized by the Spirit of Truth, as told in the Bible. I will send you a consoler. So here's the answer. What is the aim of the incarnation of spirits? It is a necessity imposed on them by God as the means of attaining perfection. For some of them, it is an expiation. For others, a mission. In order to attain perfection, it is necessary for them to undergo all the vicissitudes of corporeal existence. That's where we are now. It is the experience acquired by expiation that constitutes its usefulness. Incarnation also has another aim, namely that of fitting the spirit to perform his share in the work of creation, for which purpose he is made to assume a corporeal apparatus in harmony with the material state of each world into which he is sent, and by means of which he is enabled to accomplish a special work in connection with that world which has been appointed to him by the divine ordering. He is thus made to contribute his quota toward the general will while achieving his own advancement. So, think about this for a second. The message from Henri Louis in his poem, Inner Peace, in which he extols us to have a spirit of renovation as part of our quest in life. The bottom line is that the blueprint devised by the spirit world for each of our lives will cause deep introspection and changes to our character. This is inescapable, although some people may park in life after life. They call it parking, right? You don't really improve. You just kind of stay the same. I know I must have done that. But hopefully at some point, they'll look at us and they'll analyze us and go, okay, well, that didn't work. We know the levers to push now. We will get trials and tribulations, which will occur, which will elicit certain responses to alter our past misconceptions into a more realistic view of ourselves and our life. So think about that. And I also know that spirits, talking to the Reverend Jiva Owen, when they say this, so in that sentence that the fitting of the spirit to perform his share in the work of creation. Now, that's just a small hint in the Spirit's book, right? It was written in the 1850s. And if you read the books and read my book, the series of 3 books by the Reverend Jiva Owen, you'll understand what is meant in perform his or her share in the work of creation. Because really what heaven is, it is different. It is places for us to go through learning, different higher and higher levels of learning and information. So one day we actually graduate and we become part of the team to actually share the work in creation. Now, what do I mean by work in creation? I have read where, in messages to Jiva Owen, they talk about people that go that will lead a whole race, right? Another planet, just like they led the human race from throughout our whole history. They'll lead how things are created, the plant life, the animal life, all sorts of things. We shall be part of that creation. Now, how do we work in creation? Well, this is the great secret, and it's not really a secret, but this is the great thing that people don't understand. It's all here. The reason we have to go through this, a lot of people call it this living hell, this chaos of earth. It's really like maybe a school or college. Sometimes you love and sometimes you don't care for. That's the way you should really look at it. Is that we are here to alter this, our mind and our heart, right? We're here to get wisdom, which is the combination of intellectual capacity and your emotional maturity and spiritual maturity. And in this work of creation, is that we need to make, and since it's done by the power of thought, we need to have total power over our brains of what we think, right? So that means you don't go and gossip bad about people. You don't fly into anger, right? When you need to instruct, you focus, right? You may be indignant, but you don't let loose primitive emotions. So this is why Andre Luis extols us to have a spirit of renovation, right? And as I said before, the spirit world will figure out how to change ourselves for this. And this going through trials and tribulation. And when you have trials and tribulation, you have to look at it. This is all part of the process of spiritual maturation. We can either resist it, which I've certainly done in the past, and delay our progress as long as possible, or embrace the need for change and accelerate our ascendance. It is up to each one of us, right? We have free will. We can just be like that kid that doesn't want to go to kindergarten. Who can blame, the little, girl or fella, who wants to graduate to that? Well, we can decide the same thing, but as you would with your kid, you say, well, there's a lot of friends there. You're going to be doing this. You're going to be doing that. There's a lot of good aspects. So we have to think the same. There's a lot of good aspects to free ourselves of our primitive emotions and to think, okay, I'm being taught a lesson here. What lesson is it? What am I being told? What have I done in the past? So it's your free will. The supreme intelligence has granted us that to be as open or closed-minded as we choose. So how do we begin a renovation? Our fight to improve didn't start the moment we were deposited into a human body. The spiral of transformation began long before we were primitive spirits. And what applies to the evolution of the human form applies to all other forms. The Supreme Being continually acts to improve. Leon Denis, in his book, Life and Destiny, he illustrates the larger picture. And of course, and then you can get Leon Denis, you can look him up, Leon, and then Denis, Denis, like Dennis, if you'd say it in English. You'll find a lot of his books on PDF also. You'll also find them on Amazon.com. This is what he says. The law of progress does not apply only to man. In every domain of nature, evolution has been recognized by the thinkers of all time. From the green cell, the vague embryo floating upon the waters, through innumerable changes, the chain of the species has unfolded its length down to us. The monocellular beings are found today in millions in each human organism. It is not through one cell that the chain of species have come, but rather by a multitude of these cells grouped to form more perfect beings, in round upon round convergence toward unity. Upon this chain, every link represents a form of existence which leads to a superior form, to an organism better adapted to the growing needs and manifestations of life. But on the ladder of evolution, thought, conscience, and liberty appear only after many degrees. In the plant, intelligence sleeps. In the animal, it dreams. In man alone, it wakens, recognizes itself, and becomes conscious. From this hour, progress, fatal in some ways, and inferior forms of nature can only be realized with the accord of human will with eternal laws. It is by this accord that the union of human and divine will that are built the works which prepare for the reign of God. That is to say, the reign of justice, wisdom, and goodness, which every reasoning and conscientious being feels intuitively must come. So what did he tell us? He told us a great truth about us, the earth, and the spirit realm, and all other earths, all other planets. Everything is always in flux. Continual progress towards perfection. We are caught in an irresistible tide. We are too weak to swim against it. At best, we can only fight to maintain our position. Only by humbly bowing to a superior power can we use the direction of the great ocean to take us where we need to go. Hence, we need to see life as transformational. We aren't meant to become adults and remain at stasis, right? It's, we are used to change as kids. But many of us, when we become adults, we just, okay, I'm set. I just want to buy this house or live in this apartment or, live in this room. And that's where I want to be. Well, no. Life isn't going to let you ever be comfortable for too long. You're going to go through life. You're going to have good times and bad times. But everything, as the Spirit Manual always pointed out to Chico Xavier, if you read his books, is like, okay, don't get too happy. It's only going to, last so long. Or, why are you sad? Other people have worse than you are. It's all going to change eventually. He said that many, many times, and not those words, but other types of words. That's right. It's always going to change. That's also why we all have to remember it, and tell your friends this who are depressed, right, with certain different circumstances. No trial is meant to be where it completely defeats you. Every trial is meant to have a victory. Every trial has an end. Now, the end may be physical death, but that could be a victory in itself. Where in that act of dying, people, will spiritually change. But whatever do, it's people who are depressed and thinking of suicide thoughts don't, because in the book Memoirs of a Suicide, in this class they gave for people who committed spirits who committed suicide, they told them, look, whatever problems you had, either the next week, the next month, the next year, it would have been resolved. Don't give up. These trials were meant for your improvement. And they went through and they told each person, they looked at their past lives and they told each person why you went through this trial and what it was supposed to do to help you. It's a fascinating book by Yvonne Pereira, Memoirs of a Suicide. Can't say enough good things about it. So everything is always going to change. It's like the bell ring. I've said this many times. It's like you're in high school and the bell rings and you go to the next class. And life is like that, right? You go from one period to another. So this desire to change, even we want things to change because even we get bored, right? The desire to change, to improve oneself and the world around us is inbred in human nature. It is not an accident of evolution. It is a spark, a connection with the unseen spirit world. Most, if not all of us, have a desire to be part of a valiant crusade at one point or another in our lives. We fervently yearn to change the world for the better. This instinct, or intuition, as named by Leon Denis, is what makes us thirst for more. We know in our hearts that the earth shall be and will be a paradise someday. What we don't realize is how connected we are. We aren't islands of consciousness, untethered and adrift in space. We are not. We are tied to other spirits, incarnates and discarnates, to the spirit realm and to God. Some people feel this connection, right? They are called empath, mediums, psychics, and other names. Some have had near-death experiences, which have forever altered their previously cherished ideals. All of them consciously feel the waves wash over them. And we live in this, as I've said before, there's thoughts going through us. And we get emotions and feelings from a huge number of thoughts going through us. This is why it's so interesting. We are not isolated islands. So for those of us who aren't empaths or mediums, we are motivated by some internal longings, which we can't identify, but nevertheless, we are moved. The waves of thoughts from other intelligent beings, physical and otherwise, is relentless, like the action of waves upon the rocks. Even the hardest stone is eroded over time. So too are we moved, knowingly and gradually. Leon Denis sets in place where we stand. This is what he says. Such is the complex character of the human being, spirit, force, and matter, in which we are contained all the powers of the universe. All that is in us is in the universe. All that is in the universe is in us. By his etheric and material bodies, man finds himself united to all the worlds, visible and divine. We are made of light and shadows. What is in us is in every other being. Each soul is a projection from the eternal center. It is that which consecrates and assures the fraternity of man. We have in us the instincts of the beast, and we have, too, the chrysalis of an angel, of the radiant and pure being that we can become by moral aspiration of the heart and the constant sacrifice of self. We touch the depths of the abyss with our feet, and with our brows the high altitude of heaven. The glorious empire of the Spirit. When we listen to what is passing in the depth of our being, we hear the rumbling of hidden and tumultuous waters, the ebb and flow of the stormy sea of personality with its waves of anger, egotism, and pride. These are the voices of matter, the appeals of the lower regions, which still influence our action. But this influence we can dominate by will. Upon these voices we can impose silence. And when the murmur of passions is quieted, then the powerful voice of the infinite spirit is heard, the canticle of life eternal, whose harmony fills immensity. The more the mind is elevated and purified, the more accessible it becomes to the vibration and the voices from on high. The divine mind, which animates the universe, acts upon all minds. It seeks to penetrate, clarify, and fertilize them. As usual, Leon Denis puts a lot of information in his words. We are really connected. I wrote a book. Everything is connected, right? Spiritism, everything is connected. There's data points coming from us, like we're mini cell phones. We're always, things are going in and out, and they go all around the universe and come back to us. That's why when you start thinking good thoughts and other people around you start thinking good thoughts, you set up a positive feedback loop, and everyone else becomes happier and happier. The opposite is true. When you're with a group of people who are down and out, right, and are depressed and they're grumpy, you get grumpy and depressed. That's why when these things happen, get yourself out of that, right? Get your mind changes. Go do gardening. Go do something so you don't think about depressive stuff, because that means, it could be yourself. It could be, spirits that don't have your good in mind, is, trying to get you to obsess over something that you shouldn't even worry about. Get yourself out of that. Get your mind. Because really, this is why we're here. This is why Lauren says, why does it take us so long? Because it's hard. And, we're given a very complex instrument. Our spirit mind, of course, is even more superior to our physical mind. Here on earth, in our physical life, we're really meant to hone that talent, right? To as the spirits say, is use the white heat of suffering to remove those blemishes and put them in with all our good attributes, right? Love, compassion, fraternity, charity, honesty. So never for one moment believe you are alone, detached from all else. This is what's going to help us in our renovation. We are constantly in contact with the spirit world. Our guardian angels are waiting for us, for the least inkling of growth from us, like a parent who observes a child waiting to positively reinforce good behavior, even if by accident, so the child can be led onward towards elevated learning. This is where we stand, unaware and not comprehending our true circumstances, the vast majority of us on earth. But most of us have a vague notion of desiring more, why we are easily distracted by our instinct for self-pleasure and for group acceptance. Yet there still stirs deep inside the realization that we should strive for a higher goal than temporary luxury. Once we embark, we become more fortified, more attuned to the struggle. We change and are resistant to soul suppressors and primitive emotions. And boy, is that not true today. The soul suppressors are all around us with Facebook and Twitter and all these, things that have good and bad parts about them. Is people love to put soul suppressor on you to conform to this culture of moral relativity. We have to deny that. We have to strengthen our spirit against that. We have to listen to our conscience and know, yes, I'm sorry, there are things we should not do. We should love everybody. We should hope for the best. We should pray positively for them, but we should not harm children. There's a lot of things we should not do that our culture is trying to normalize. I'm sorry, no. So once we embark, we become more fortified, more attuned to the struggle, right? And we change, and we are resistant to soul suppressors and primitive emotions. When we are spiritually, intellectually conditioned to great strength, then the ascent begins in earnest. But first, we must start the journey. So, how do we start the journey? How do we begin? It's not easy. The inertia of years of self-indulgence and petty thoughts are difficult to overcome. I know they were extremely hard for me. When I found Spiritism, I thought I'd discovered all the answers. I intellectually knew about the spirit realm and how we are guided through many lives in order to ascend. I could talk about how the entire earth was led and directed by the machinations of a higher authority. The shock that I finally uncovered how my own future could have been foretold with exacting detail was as if I could breathe again. I was reborn, or so I thought. The more I read books by spirit authors, I realized I had learned about Spiritism as one does from viewing a documentary. I understood and memorized the facts, the timeline, the basic doctrine. I was able to write about Spiritism and discourse at length about the process of reincarnation. But I was still the same person. I was sarcastic. I was aloof. I was still selfish and prideful. I was all of those. I had merely exchanged one belief system for another, like changing clothes. Everything was on the outside and nothing altered inside. I was still me, an immature spirit. The spirit Joanna in the book Self-Discovery, An Inner Search, put her finger on my problem. This is what she said. The human being is constituted of psychological implements that governs one's life. Human beings need to adapt their goal to spiritual values. The latter should surpass the corporeal boundaries in order to help the human being to meet the transcendental conscience. Naturally, at first, educational goals will form the individual's wealth of knowledge. Familial goals will induce learning in the domestic laboratory by developing feelings of love and personal relationships. Social goals will extend the circle of effectivity, favoring the group's growth. Economic objectives will format the financial equilibrium and harmony between people. Artistic goals will contribute to beauty, ethics, and the ideals, aesthetics, and the ideas. However, spiritual objectives will crown the achievements of the individual's progress, leading one to fullness. When men and women are not aware of their tentative steps towards fullness, they often find themselves saturated and unmotivated, becoming pessimists and frustrated after conquering their goals. I read that, I go, whoa. I was that person who successfully traversed all of the goals except the spiritual. Now, I was never rich or famous, but I got the goals I wanted to. I made good money, I had a family, all that, right? And in completion, though, of those goals, of being at the level I wanted to be, I was still the same, only more so. My motivation had run out. I was drifting. And this was even after I first found Spiritism. I feel that I didn't start to tackle my artistic goals until I began to write and analyze what I had researched about the doctrine of Spiritism. I was happy and content in my musings at first, but then as I plunged further into the deeper meanings and the importance of love, I found myself unable to fully empathize with the written word. I could read the sentences, but I couldn't internalize the meaning. And I was helped in this by other people talking to me where, they're saying, I could read and the words jumped out and, they leaped at me. And I thought, well, that didn't happen to me. They didn't leap at me. I didn't feel different because I read some words. I just intellectualized them. And then I said, okay, I realize the need for self-renovation. Only then did I start to not only keep my speech in line, but I started to control my thoughts. If I thought ill of a person, I tried to stop that immediately and think of them with understanding and love, knowing that they're going through trials every bit as perilous as mine. It made a difference. When you start controlling your thoughts and you just put a wall, right? Put a wall there and don't let those petty, primitive thoughts come in or go out. Then you really your heart starts to change. So only then did I realized the need for self-renovation. Only then did I start, right? As I said before, to keep my mouth shut. So Joanna explains the result of a dedicated effort for spiritual improvement. This is what she says. The individual's incessant renewal of values for one's improvement becomes a permanent motivation for the settlement of the real being that is victorious over oneself. The immediate human goals are stimulating for one's terrestrial corporeal existence. When one adds to one's goals the identification with cosmic conscious, they remain as propellant forces for endless progress. To the world's eyes, triumphant men and women are perhaps those who shine on earth. They step up towards illusory success. However, they carry heavy anguish within their hearts, and their spirit is full of pain. The only ones who will find real fullness are those who free themselves and love after traveling through difficulties and surpassing the initial steps of Earth's process at the social, familial, and personal levels. Those individuals remain focused on general wellness and are transformed interiorly, as well as enlightened by the flame of immortality, and immersed in that by causality. Joanna's correct. As I have worked to reform myself, I have felt the propellant forces driving me on. I'm not saying I've improved much, right? I'm still selfish and prideful, and with a host of other primitive emotional values, and states, but I feel like I'm really making progress. I feel so less stressed. And this is where I cannot say enough on this, is that, hello. So, thank you for loving the answer. This is where I believe this is true. You follow that kind of blueprint by Andre Luis. What you get is inner peace through Spiritism. You really get to be a less stressful person. You things happen to you. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Someone, it's happened as well. Someone, somehow we got cheated out of $2,500, right? I would have, oh my God, before that, I would have just been agonizing. I would have thought, oh, how am I going to get revenge? How can I punish that person? Oh, and I would have just been days just going through that, right? And now it's like, well, okay. Either I needed to learn that lesson, or, maybe I took money from that person in some previous life, and God bless you, here it is. I'm glad I'm paying it back. And if you can get to that level where it's like, I still got, darn, I lost that money, but it's like, okay. I'm sure there's a good reason that, many spirits say nothing is by chance. I think some things are by chance. So I don't quite agree with that, but it's like, it's best to think that almost nothing's by chance. And that way you can take it as, okay, this is for my good, right? Because and I've had people write to me and say, or actually comments in the Facebook pages, why does God punish us? And I'm here all alone and I have a terrible life. And I keep saying, no, God does not punish us. It's helping us renovate ourselves in the Spirit of Renovation. We are going through classes. We are going through trials and tribulations to pull certain stimuli, as I said before, levers, so we can really radically change. If we're lucky, we can radically change in one life on earth, our personality. Because what do we take with us when we're dead? Just our personality. That's all. And if you can improve that from your previous life, oh my God, you have done one of the greatest victories that you could do. If you made yourself a better person, if you stop gossiping about people, if you stop plotting revenge when somebody does something, if you stop getting mad because someone said something rude to you and that rude to me. If you can say, oh, whatever, and God bless you, and I know they probably didn't mean it. If you can be that way, you're just so less stressed here on earth. And then you don't waste all that effort. You don't waste all that effort. And then you can look, you can meditate. When the power was out last week, I sat and I meditate. I read, I've been reading again, parts of the gospel of According to Spiritism, which is a great book. I can't recommend it enough. Again, you can find that on the EDICI bookstore. Click his picture on my website. And you can get it on Amazon too. But, you can read these things. And then these things are so much information. That's why, of course, I wrote my books too. On my books is I take all this information, like the case for reincarnation. I take all this information. I go, here is what, from the books in English, I don't have all the books like in Portuguese, stuff like that, is what they tell us, what the higher spirits who are brought to us through spiritist mediums tell us about reincarnation. Or explore your destiny. What does that mean? What are our trials on earth? How do our trials work? In the books, the problem is the solution. Why do you have problems? Well, think about that. The reason you really think you have a problem, it's something you did in the past life. And that problem you have in this life, trial, tribulation, whatever you want to call it, is really the solution to what you've done something incorrect in a previous life. Now, Spiritism doesn't like to use the word sin. It's more like errors, wrongs, right? Because when you're a primitive spirit, you don't know. You don't even know to listen to your conscience well. As you get more and more mature, spiritually mature, you start really listening to this conscience, and you say, okay, well, I could make money, but I don't feel right. And then you don't do it. And then you're relaxed. But then for those who say, I don't know if I'm really treating people nicely on my goal to make a lot of money, but I'll look at all these things I can buy. You do it and you make money, but these people are stressed, and you can see it in a lot of these people. A lot of very successful people, you can just see the stress in their faces, and they're very smart, and most of them are very nice people. But they just had to ignore their conscience a little bit to get where they want to. And I don't blame them all. I've done the same, right? Because you cannot this is, our modern culture. It's not black and white. It's gray. You've got to, I still have to do things that I don't really want to do in order to keep my job. Oh, sorry. So anyway, so that's something that's important. So anyway, so nevertheless, I believe I am on the right track. Even in my glaring imperfections, I am more relaxed, more acceptance of the trials put before me, and I'm more loving, even those who were placed in my life to provide a hard lesson. So again, I want to say, everyone, tell your friends about Kardec Radio, Facebook Kardec page. Please share this Facebook streaming to other Facebook pages. Go to my YouTube site or my BitChute site. It's on. You can do a link on my blog, nwspiritism.com. You can click on that. You can see my books. You can get on my mailing list for nwspiritism.com. We'll just send you like one email whenever I send out a new blog. Or if you're on the YouTube or BitChute site, you can look through all my YouTube videos. I will put this video also on that site. I think it'll also go on the Kardec Radio site. But anyway, I want to say God bless to everybody, and thank you very much for being with me today. Hey, congratulations, dude. Yeah, you sent a reminder?